Your voice, your feelings, what you need is exactly what your marriage needs in order for you to get the growth and the progress that you are wanting out of it. So if you think you're saving your marriage from drama, you're actually capping the potential growth of your marriage by not saying stuff.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how easy it is for marriage to take a back seat. But unlike your parents' marriage, your marriage can feel good while raising kids and doesn't have to feel hard. It can look like having each other's backs, even flirting and looking forward to spending time with each other. And I'm here to help you. So join me here each week as we dive into what it takes for your marriage to become something you enjoy again, from how to handle conflict better and bringing that spark back into your relationship. If you're ready for your marriage to feel good again, this podcast is for you. Let's dive in.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. Today's episode is inspired by my Facebook group, which, by the way, if you're not in there already, go join. It's also called Marriage and Motherhood. And inside, I share tips and prompts and encouragement to help you change how you feel in your marriage, help you learn how to be a better communicator, help you reignite that spark and partnership in your marriage. So go check that out. But anyway, this topic was inspired by that community because I had asked them, what are they working on this year? And majority of them said communication. And when I was talking to some of the ladies, what came up was learning how to get comfortable with speaking up, AKA overcoming being conflict avoidant. So we're going to dive into that today. This is a very juicy topic, which I'm super excited to talk about with you and share more about my experiences, my clients' experience. And I'm hoping that this is going to help you realize just how important it is to share how you feel, what you want, because without that, your marriage cannot grow. So let's get into it. I'm really excited to cover this particular topic because if you're having trouble speaking up, that means you are conflict avoidant. All right. And when we think about the way people communicate, there are 2 types of people: people who are either comfortable speaking up or uncomfortable speaking up. Okay. So today I'm talking to those of you who are in the latter group, those who are not comfortable speaking up. This is you if you hold stuff in, you brush things under the rug and pretend everything is fine. But inside, you know that things aren't because you're unhappy with something or you want to address something, but you don't. Okay. And you know you're avoidant when you are regularly blowing up at your partner because you waited too long to say something and you get pushed over the edge. And oftentimes it's like something small, right? Something small feels really big and you get pushed over the edge because you cannot hold it in any longer and you explode and you carry resentment towards your partner because there's a lack of communication and you feel misunderstood, unsupported, and things don't get resolved between you two. Okay. When this happens, you're likely feeling like your marriage is not growing. You feel disconnected. You don't feel very secure in it. You feel lonely at times and maybe even hopeless about the relationship and the direction that it's headed towards. If you're experiencing a lot of these moments and regularly blowing up at your partner, this means that you've learned to become avoidant when it comes to conflict. And you avoid bringing things up because maybe you think things are going well and you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to ruin things and quote unquote create drama, right? Or you're afraid of what your spouse is going to say or how they're going to react. Or you'd rather deal with the discomfort of being frustrated or having your needs unmet than the discomfort of the conversation getting heated. or you're afraid of opening up because of how uncomfortable it feels to be vulnerable, right? You want to be seen, you want to be understood, but feeling seen and letting people see you feels really uncomfortable. Or you're afraid of your needs not being met after mustering up the courage to be vulnerable, right? Maybe you have a history of people letting you down, or you don't like all the emotions that come up when you bring stuff. These are some of the most common reasons why you might feel conflict avoidance. And if you're resonating with this and you're like, yep, that's me, check, 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 I want you to take a look at how your parents dealt with issues. Okay. Because you likely learned this from somewhere. Either you learned this from a parent who's also avoidant, or you were not avoidant before, but the way people responded to you when you did speak up made you want to change your way of approaching conflict. And you're like, this is not safe. This is not something I want to experience again. And so you went back into your shell. I'm just going to deal with it myself because why bother? This is not worth my energy. It's not worth the drama. So I'm just going to deal with it myself. And I got it from here. One reason could be whether your parents were avoidant or not. It could have been that your parents didn't show you how to handle conflict. Maybe they handled conflict behind closed doors. And so you didn't see a healthy example of how to initiate conversations where you do have an issue. Or maybe you didn't see a good example of how to handle conflict when there is an issue without it turning into something huge and tense. And when you haven't seen positive experiences, positive outcomes from conflict being initiated, from speaking up and sharing how you feel, what you need, it could feel really scary. And you'll want to avoid the potential pain that could come up with it, right? Nobody wants to walk into something knowing that they're going to get hurt, expecting to get hurt, right? And when you have trouble speaking up and sharing your needs, what's going on is that the anxiety of the unknown is eating you up. It's overwhelming, right? It's much easier to deal with the known discomfort, right? You feeling frustrated, angry, lonely, unseen, than it is to deal with the unknown discomfort of, well, what will happen when I say something? Is he going to meet my needs? Is he going to be understanding? Is he going to listen? Is he going to get defensive, critical, blame me, dismiss me, not meet my need? So when you're dealing with that, it could feel easier for you to be like, you know what? I'm just not going to go down that route because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to deal with that because that will hurt even more. And so you keep it to yourself. You brush it under the rug. But when issues go unaddressed, I know that you know logically the issues don't disappear, right? The rug that you're brushing it under is not some magical rug like in Aladdin that resolves issues. The issue just sits there waiting to be addressed and constantly reminding you that it's still there while resentment builds. And when it does surface, it becomes a much bigger issue to address than how it was in the very beginning, right? I had a client who learned to be avoidant like this. She wouldn't share things that were bothering her because she would judge herself for getting upset by things. And she essentially brushed it under the rug as if not addressing it would make her feel okay because she would hopefully forget about it and not have to bring up the issue and in her mind cause problems in her marriage. That's how she saw things, right? Well, if I don't say something, then we're going to be fine because I'm not going to bring up an issue. I'm not going to cause a fight. So she thought, I'm just going to keep it to myself. But whenever it became too much, she would have all these examples of past things that she never shared to bring up as if she was reserving all this ammunition to win the fight, We called it her filing cabinet. Every time she got upset, she'd file it away for a rainy day and then bust them all out and catch her husband by surprise because he had absolutely no clue, like zip zero, about how she felt. And he would leave the conversation feeling absolutely blindsided and ambushed. Nobody likes to feel like, where did that come from? And whoa, it's almost like a gust of wind coming at you. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? Right? That's how he felt because she never shared how she felt in those times. It was like after the fifth time where she just completely couldn't take any more. That's when he would hear about it. And she thought that she was actually helping her marriage by not, quote unquote, causing drama, but she actually caused more trauma by not speaking up. Okay. But through our time together, she learned how to be more open and vulnerable with her husband so that it would give him an opportunity to address it with her so that she wouldn't get overwhelmed by all of this stuff, by piling it on, by brushing it under the rug. And she realized that it was okay. It was safe to bring things up instead of brushing it under the rug. And by doing this, their communication improved. It helped their marriage grow because she was letting him in, which in turn let her see how supportive he could be. And their partnership got stronger, which led to more connection and more happiness, more marital satisfaction on both ends. Okay. And when I think about this, you know what I think of? I think of when we take our kids to the doctor and they have to get a shot. To us, we've had tons of experience getting shots, right? Especially when we're pregnant. They are taking our blood all of the time. It felt like every single week I was getting my blood drawn. I mean, not actually, but it kind of felt like that, right? And if we were afraid of needles before, by the time the baby's there, it's like, no, whatever. You just stick your arm out. You're like, just take what you need. It's not a big deal anymore, right? It's become normal. It's part of our routine. But with our kids, they're new to it. They have limited experience with it. And the experience they do have is infrequent. So they kind of forget, right? And what they do remember is it's negative. Not that, oh, it's fast and once it's over, it's over. By the time I recognize that it's hurting, it's already done, right? What they remember is, oh my gosh, that needle looks really scary. And inside, it's this overwhelming anxiety that builds up, just shoots through the roof, right? I know my son, it's the anxiety that gets him, just thinking about the shot. But like once it's done, he recovers so quickly. And it's like he gets amnesia every time he gets a shot. He doesn't remember that, hey, it's not actually a big deal. It doesn't hurt as much as you think it does. And they work themselves so much that they spend more time worrying about it, almost like 100 times longer than how long the actual shot takes and the amount of discomfort that they actually feel. But as kids get older, the more exposure they get to it, the less anxious they feel around it. And at some point, it becomes business as usual. Okay, here's my arm. I'm not going to look because that makes me feel more anxious and that's going to make it hurt more. So I'm just going to look the other direction and get it done. And boom, by the time I feel that pinch, it's over. Speaking up works the same way. The more exposure or experience you have with speaking up, the less anxious you're going to feel and the more comfortable and confident you're going to be anytime there is something that you want to share with your partner. Okay. And when you feel more comfortable about it, you're going to be more willing to tackle it, to navigate it, to bring it up as an issue for you to address. And you're going to do less avoiding. In this scenario where you're like, oh, I feel really uncomfortable, practice makes progress. Okay. I'm not going to say practice makes perfect because we're human, right? And we don't always know how things are going to go. And we have no control over how our spouse is going to react. And to be frank, humans are unpredictable, right? We can kind of have an idea, but we don't always know how it's going to go, right? But with practice, opening up does get easier. And the anxiety you feel around opening up, around being vulnerable and being transparent and not knowing how your spouse is going to react does lessen. Okay. Personally, I did not grow up learning how to share how I feel. Okay. Like I grew up in a household, like many of you probably, where I was to be seen and not heard, right? Like happiness, joy, all of that perfectly fine to express. Anger, frustration, annoyance, nope, right? Not okay. That was to be expected though, because in my parents' generation, also the same thing. Emotions were not something to be shared unless they were the comfortable emotions, right? Like smiling and laughing and whatever. But when I felt any of those uncomfortable emotions, I learned to just deal with it, to suck it up. Don't bring that because it's going to get you in trouble, right? So when I got into relationships, I had this internal struggle where I wanted to bring things up, but I didn't know how to without it turning into a fight. I didn't know how to while still feeling comfortable in my body. Like it literally felt like so much energy inside of me because there was so much like anger or frustration. But I was like, I don't have the words to know that it's going to turn out okay. I don't know if they're going to leave me. I don't know if they're going to get upset. I don't know if they're going to meet my needs. I just don't know what I don't know. And this is really uncomfortable. Right. So my anxiety would go up because I'm like, oh, does this mean that it's going to turn into a fight? Does this mean that we're going to be fighting for hours and not get anywhere? Does this mean that I'm going to get choked up because I don't know how to articulate what I'm feeling or what I need? So I struggle to speak vulnerably and openly because all that came out were these unhealthy, toxic ways of communication because of what I learned growing up, right? I learned to be passive aggressive, to criticize, to blame, because that's all I knew. But here's what I learned over the past decade of putting in the work and transforming how I communicate and what I am now teaching my clients to be able to do, because your voice, your feelings, what you need is exactly what your marriage needs in order for you to get the growth and the progress that you are wanting out of it. Okay. So if you think you're saving your marriage from drama, you're actually capping the potential growth of your marriage by not saying stuff. Okay. Now, of course, there's going to be little things that maybe aren't worth bringing up, but I'm talking about things that would really affect your satisfaction in your marriage. If you're holding that stuff back, you are robbing your marriage, your partner, of the chance of making things better. You're robbing yourself of being able to build on your partnership to see what your marriage is made out of. Okay. Marriages become strong because of what they can overcome. But if you are not giving your marriage anything to overcome and you're pretending everything is all peachy keen, then you are limiting the growth of your marriage. Okay. So here's what I learned over the past decade of doing work on myself, of really giving my marriage a fair chance of becoming what my husband and I want it to be, to fulfill the vision that we see for our family, for our relationship together as husband and wife. The first thing is, I am the only one responsible for how I feel, point blank. No one can make me feel any type of way. I decide. Someone could do something that might trigger a feeling, but they cannot make me feel something. And as long as I know how I feel and I'm taking the time to reflect on it, I've done my part. My job is to get to know me. It should not be a guessing game for my partner to be like, I wonder how she feels. I wonder what she's thinking. I wonder what she wants. That's my job to know. This is where it's important to stay in your own lane, right? Water your own garden. Figure out what's going on with you. When you can know that, you're going to go into the conversation that much more prepared and equipped for it to become a productive conversation. But when you yourself don't even know what's going on, you're setting your marriage up for failure. Okay. Second one, I am not responsible for how other people react to what I'm sharing. I can learn healthy communication and take responsibility for how I feel, but how they react says more about them than it says about, and I don't need to do anything to control it. Okay. And the same goes for you. If you're reacting poorly, that says more about you than your partner. That says more about how you're able to or not able to manage your emotions and understand what's going on inside of you and articulate that and work through that than it does about them and vice versa. So if they're reacting poorly, they're going through something. They are struggling internally and using the coping mechanisms that they have learned growing up and projecting it onto you. Does that mean anything about you? No, nothing. They're having a difficult time coping. Okay. Another thing is my feelings and needs are worthy of being shared. If you're married, you got a high chance that your spouse cares about how you feel and what you need. And if it doesn't seem like it, it could be because of them carrying resentment. And there's so much hurt piled on top of the love that you have for each other that you two have built walls up that need to be knocked down. Okay. But you guys have chosen each other as partners. So there is some desire to make sure that you're each happy. And the more transparent you are, the better the relationship can become because there's real intimacy in the relationship because it's based on truth and depth rather than assumptions. When we don't share anything, we are forcing our partners to assume things, whether they assume everything's fine because you're not saying anything, or they assume other things that might not even be true based on just what they see and what they gather. But when there's more transparency on both sides, then you're really setting your marriage up for success because then you know what to deal with. Like, okay, all the cards are on the table. This is what we're working with. Let's piece the things together and come up with a solution. But when a lot of pieces are missing, it's like when you have a puzzle and you're like, "God, where is this one piece? We're always like missing one piece. I don't know how it happens, right? But it feels incomplete. You can't finish it. You can't enjoy it because something's missing. Okay. Another thing that I have learned is that however they choose to respond, you're going to be okay because you can think of how you want to respond based on the different possible outcomes that you can think of and prepare yourself. Whether A, they're going to meet your needs, cool. Probably don't need to think of a possible response for that. Or they're not going to meet your needs. How are you going to respond? Right. And that leads into the next thing, which is you're never powerless in a situation because there's always a choice. You always have choices. Maybe you can't think of it at the time, but you always have one. If your spouse doesn't want to go with you somewhere, you can go by yourself. You can ask a friend. If your spouse doesn't want to do the dishes, you can do them yourself, or you can ask how they would prefer to contribute to upkeeping the home so that you can feel like you've got a supportive partnership, right? There are different ways you can handle this. If it doesn't work for you to go out with your girlfriends on a Saturday night and you really need a break, you can ask what would help make it more possible for that to happen. Or have a more high level conversation around how often you each get to have time away for yourselves to recharge and feel like yourself. Or ask, okay, when would be a better time for this to happen? No doesn't always mean no, right? You can figure out, okay, well, this specific thing is a no. Let's uncover how we can make this happen still, maybe in a different way, maybe a different time, right? Try and think of what your choices are. I think a lot of times when we feel like we're unsupported, it's because we don't see the choices in front of us. We don't think about it. We just hear the no, and it's like a door slamming in our face. But I don't want you to see it that way. Okay. You are still you. You are still fine. think of the alternate ways to move forward if you get a no. Okay. No matter what happens, you always have a choice. And when you remind yourself of what your choices are, you can stay in your power and feel more confident and know that you're going to be okay no matter what your partner does or how they react. Okay. How you react is fully up to you. Now, sometimes it might feel like, well, I feel like I don't even have control over myself anymore. Then that's a different issue. Let's work on that. Okay. That's what I help my clients with. If you feel like your emotions are fully in control in those moments, then we've got to work on your regulation skills. You understanding what your emotions are, you getting comfortable with the uncomfortableness of your emotions. Okay. When you are more comfortable with your emotions, it's like this magical thing happens where when you see your partner reacting, you don't feel the need to react because you understand what's going on inside of them because you now get it yourself. Okay. You become more resilient. Then instead of you two acting out as your worst versions of yourself because both of you are acting out of pride and hurt, you can now just notice I feel hurt instead of coming out as criticism or blame or dismissing, talking over, rolling your eyes, all the things that you know aren't helping the conversation, but can't help yourself from doing because you're in your reactive state. The more you understand yourself and your emotions, the more aware you become of what's happening and the more you're able to manage what you end up doing to express your emotions. So you become less reactive and more responsive. Okay. You can decide how you respond to your spouse. And then how they perceive you changes. You are no longer reacting to them like you normally do. And this over time can influence how your spouse starts to interact with you when things get heated. It's like a domino effect. It makes everything better. Staying in your own lane changes so much. So instead of looking to your partner and waiting for them to change, look at what you can do because that's what you have control over, right? So when they do something that you expected them to do, let's say you have a very pessimistic expectation of how they're going to respond to you, consider, okay, if he does this, what will I do? So don't wait to walk into a trap knowing how you normally respond and react only to feel bad about how things turned out, right? Prepare yourself. If he responds this way, this is what I'm going to do because I want to be proud of how I show up. I don't want to feel like, oh gosh, I got into the ring with him again. I joined him on this emotional roller coaster. I lost control over myself, right? It's not a good feeling to know that you also contributed to the ugliness of the fight. Don't feel like you need to lower yourself and match his energy just because he's done so. Remember, how people react says more about them than it does about you. So take it less personally. Easier said than done, but so true. Okay. So decide how you're going to respond so that you can feel proud instead of continuing the argument and adding to the drama. Okay. You putting a stop to it by setting healthy boundaries or directing the conversation back to what it's really about. If they start to go off on a tangent with their emotional reaction, is going to do more for your marriage than you shoving things under the rug. Okay. The more experience you have with this, the easier it's going to feel. The more control you have of yourself, which first starts with understanding yourself, the easier this will be. The more emotional intimacy you're going to build as a couple, the more connected you're going to feel, the easier communication is going to get, the more your communication as a couple is going to grow, and the more happiness you're going to get to create in your marriage together. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions at all. And the courage that you muster up is so worth your while. don't be afraid to speak up. Okay. I don't care what other people have said to you in the past. You may have been hurt in the past, and I don't want you to let that influence or affect or impact or rob you of what your marriage can become. Even if that person was your husband, people change. Give him a chance to show you what he's capable of doing. Give him a chance to show up for you. Okay. We are creatures of habit. And so we do look to our past. But what I'm recommending that you do is to not live life looking through your rear view mirror. Okay. That's only going to create more of what you don't want to experience. What I want you to do is learn from your past experiences, but don't let that direct the direction you're going in your marriage. Keep what you want in mind and do the things that feel aligned to help you create that. And avoiding conflict is not one of them. Okay. And if this is resonating with you and you're like, yeah, this is exactly what I've been dealing with, and I do want to become more confident and calm about approaching conflict. And I want to have the courage to bring things up so that my marriage does have the capacity to grow, and it will grow. I'm here to help you. I would love to help you get through this. Okay. So reach out to me. Let's talk about how coaching works and how I can help you do this. And I will catch you back here on the next episode. Bye.
That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. I would so appreciate that. And if you love what I share here, then you're going to love and want to join my free private Facebook community that's also called Marriage and Motherhood. I hope to see and connect with you in there. Otherwise, I'll catch you back here for the next episode. Bye.